The chandelier glittered above me, its crystals catching the light like 1,000 tiny daggers, casting sharp reflections across the marble floor of Aunt Margot's sprawling estate. The annual Adler family gathering was in full swing, laughter sharp with self-importance, clinking glasses, the air heavy with expensive cologne and the faint musk of old money. I stood near the edge of the room, my black dress simple but tailored, a quiet armor against the weight of their gazes. To them, I was still Leila, the girl who'd never amount to much, the one they'd pinned their expectations on like a moth to a board. And tonight they'd remind me of it. I sipped my wine, the glass cool against my lips, watching them orbit each other. Uncles in crisp suits, cousins flashing Rolexes, aunts dripping in pearls. They clustered in groups, their voices a symphony of boasts, stock portfolios, yacht purchases, boardroom conquests. I was a shadow in their orbit, unnoticed until they needed a target for their pity or their barbs. 10 years I'd endured this, their assumptions a quiet fuel I'd turned into something they'd never see coming. But tonight that fuel burned brighter. Leila. Aunt Margot's voice sliced through the hum, her tone a velvet glove over a steel fist. She glided toward me, her silver hair swept into an elegant twist, her emerald necklace glinting like a warning. Goodness, I almost didn't recognize you in that understated little number. Her eyes raked over my dress, her smile tight with condescension. Still playing secretary, are we? I met her gaze, my own smile practiced and calm. Executive assistant Aunt Margot, I corrected, keeping my voice even. At Horizon Dynamics. She raised a manicured brow, her red nails gleaming as she swirled her champagne. Horizon, Till fetching coffee for those executives, I suppose? You're too clever for that, darling. Why not join Adler Enterprises? We could find you something substantial. The barb landed, soft but sharp, a familiar sting I'd learned to swallow. I like where I am, I said, lifting my glass slightly. Thanks for the thought. She tilted her head, pity flickering in her eyes. Well, suit yourself. But you could do so much more if you'd stop being so stubborn. She turned away before I could reply, her heels clicking as she rejoined Uncle Victor, who was holding court by the fireplace, regaling the room with tales of his latest merger. I exhaled, the tension coiling in my chest. Stubborn. That's what they called it. My refusal to bow to the family machine, to take a cushy job at Adler Enterprises and play the dutiful niece. To them, a woman's place was decorative or supportive, marry well or at least orbit the men who ran the world. I'd rejected that script a decade ago and they'd never forgiven me for it. Leila, hey. My cousin Theo swaggered over, his tie loose, his grin wide with the confidence of someone who'd just been named VP of Adler's London branch. Still at Horizon? I could pull strings, get you something at the firm. Maybe assistant to the strategy team. Time to step up from typing memos, right? I smiled, small and tight. Appreciate it, Theo, but I'm good. He shrugged, clapping me on the shoulder like I was a kid who didn't know better. You're too smart to waste away there, but hey, some people like the sidelines. He winked, then leaned toward his wife, Clara, whispering something that made her laugh, a sound that grated, sharp and knowing. I turned away, the wine bitter on my tongue. The sidelines. That's where they saw me, where they'd always seen me. 10 years ago, I'd stood in this same room, fresh from NYU, my business degree still warm in my hands, pitching a startup idea to Uncle Victor and Aunt Margot. I'd worn a cheap blazer, my voice trembling with hope as I laid out my plan, a consulting firm to streamline corporate efficiency. They'd listened, or pretended to, then dismissed me with polite smiles and veiled insults. Sweet Leila, but impractical. Stick to something safe. I'd left that night, their rejection a spark that lit a fire I'd nursed in silence ever since. Now I watched them, Margot's smirk, Theo's casual arrogance, the way they measured worth in titles and trust funds. They didn't know I'd built something bigger than their empire, something I'd unveil tomorrow. I'd spent a decade at Horizon Dynamics, not as a secretary but as a shadow, climbing, strategizing until I'd taken the helm. CEO, unannounced until the ink dried on a $100 million deal. They'd see soon enough. I set my glass down, the clink soft against the table, and slipped toward the balcony. The night air was cool, the city skyline a glittering promise below. Their laughter faded behind me, but my mind was sharp, counting down. Tomorrow I'd walk into that boardroom, sign those papers, and turn their world upside down. They'd mocked the wrong person, and I'd make them feel every word. The balcony air was a sharp relief, cutting through the stuffy warmth of Aunt Margot's estate. I leaned against the railing, the cold metal pressing into my palms, the city lights sprawling below like a map of possibilities I'd claimed in secret. Inside, the party hummed on, glasses clinking, voices rising in a chorus of self-congratulation. I could still hear Theo's laugh, that careless edge that said he'd never had to prove himself, not really. To them, I was a footnote, a girl who'd chosen the wrong path and stayed there. They didn't know I'd rewritten the story. I pulled my phone from my clutch, the screen lighting up with a text from my assistant, Elise. Contracts prepped for tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp, $100M on the line. You ready? My lips curved, a quiet thrill running through me. Ready? I'd been ready for a decade, building Horizon Dynamics from a mid-tier firm into a powerhouse, all while they thought I was shuffling papers. I typed back, more than ready. See you then. The screen dimmed, and I slipped the phone away, my breath fogging in the night. Leila, hiding out here? Uncle Victor's voice rumbled behind me, heavy with the cigars he smoked and the authority he wore like a second skin. I turned, meeting his broad frame in the doorway, his gray suit impeccable, his eyes narrowing as they took me in. You look like you're plotting something. Just enjoying the view, I said, my tone light, deflecting. He stepped closer, his presence filling the balcony, a man who'd built Adler Enterprises into a billion-dollar name and expected everyone to bow to it. Margot says you're still at that little company, he said, leaning on the railing beside me, his voice a mix of curiosity and pity. What's it called, Horizon? You've been there, what, 10 years? Time to move up, don't you think? I like it there, I said, my smile tight, the same answer I'd given Margot. It suits me. He chuckled, a low, patronizing sound. Suits you? Leila, you're an Adler. You've got sharper brains than half my board, but you're wasting them on, what, scheduling meetings? Come work for me. I'll put you in operations, real responsibility. The offer hung there, tempting to anyone who didn't know better. I tilted my head, studying him, the lines etched in his face, the confidence that came from never being questioned. Thanks, Uncle Victor, I said, but I'm not looking to switch. He frowned, his brow creasing. Stubborn, just like your mother. She could have run things too, you know, if she'd stayed in the game instead of... He stopped, waving a hand, dismissing her choice to leave the family empire for a quieter life. My mother, who'd taught me to build my own path, not follow theirs. You're throwing away potential, Leila. Don't expect us to keep propping you up. I don't, I said, my voice steady, the irony curling inside me. Propping me up? They'd never lifted a finger, only pushed me down, expecting me to bend. Tomorrow they'd see how high I'd climbed without them. He grunted, straightening. Your call. But don't come crying when you realize you've missed your shot. He clapped my shoulder, a gesture meant to be fatherly but landing like a judgment, then headed back inside, his silhouette swallowed by the party's glow. I stayed there, the wind tugging at my dress, my mind drifting back to that first rejection. 10 years ago, I'd sat across from him in Adler's Midtown office, my proposal trembling in my hands, a consulting firm to rethink their bloated operations. I'd spent months on it, every number checked, every strategy honed. He'd barely glanced at it, his pen tapping the desk as he'd said, Interesting, Leila, but we don't need outsiders fixing what isn't broken. Aunt Margot had chimed in, her smile syrupy. Maybe start small, dear. Reception, perhaps? I'd left that room, my cheap heels clicking on the marble, their dismissal a wound I'd turned into steel. Now I watched the party through the glass doors. Victor's booming laugh, Margot's poised nods, Theo's swagger. They saw me as a failure, a woman who'd settled for less because I wouldn't play their game. They didn't know I'd built my own board, moved my own pieces. Tomorrow, Horizon would seal a deal bigger than anything Adler had touched this year, and I'd sign it, CEO, not secretary. I stepped back inside, the heat hitting me like a wave, their eyes brushing past me as if I were invisible. Good. Let them look away. In 12 hours, they'd have no choice but to see. Party's noise pressed against me as I slipped back into the ballroom, a tide of voices and clinking glasses that felt both familiar and alien. My black dress hugged me like a second skin, understated but deliberate, a shield I'd chosen to keep their assumptions intact. I moved through the crowd, a ghost in their midst, their conversations washing over me like water over stone. Aunt Margot's laugh rang out, high and cutting, as she held court near the grand piano, her emerald necklace flashing with every gesture. Uncle Victor's voice boomed from the fireplace, his latest triumph, some $50 million acquisition, draping the room in his ego. I was invisible to them, and I'd made it that way. I found a spot by the bar, leaning against the polished wood, my wine glass half empty. The bartender, a young guy with tired eyes, slid me a refill without asking. I nodded thanks, my gaze drifting to my cousin Freya, Theo's younger sister, twirling in a sapphire gown, her laughter bright as she flirted with a man I didn't recognize. She'd married into a banking dynasty last year, her role in the family secured by a ring and a name. That's what they'd wanted for me, too, a safe match, a supporting part in their play. I'd chosen differently, and they'd never let me forget it. Leila, there you are. Freya's voice chirped as she broke away, gliding toward me, her heels clicking like a metronome. Her smile was wide, too wide, the kind that hit a knife. You're so quiet tonight, hiding from all the fun? Just taking it in, I said, sipping my wine, the tartness grounding me. You look happy. Oh, I am, she said, tossing her hair, the sapphire earrings catching the light. Jasper's taking me to Paris next week, business of course, but we'll make time for romance. You should visit sometime, get out of that office. Maybe, I said, my tone neutral, my mask firmly in place. Paris. I'd been there last month, negotiating with a French tech firm, but she didn't need to know that. None of them did. She tilted her head, studying me. Still at Horizon, right? Typing away for those suits? You're too good for that, Leila. Jasper could set you up. His firm's always looking for assistants. I'm fine where I am, I said, the words a reflex now, worn smooth by repetition. Her pitying look mirrored Margot's, a family trait, assuming I was stuck, not choosing. Suit yourself, she said, shrugging. But don't wait too long to climb out of that rut. You're not getting younger. She giggled, patting my arm, then spun back to her husband, leaving me with the sting of her words and the weight of my silence. I set the glass down, my fingers brushing the bar's edge. A rut. That's what they saw, a decade of my life reduced to a dead-end job, a woman too stubborn or too weak to rise. They didn't know I'd spent those years climbing, not a ladder but a mountain, each step hidden from their view. Horizon Dynamics wasn't just that office, it was mine, reshaped by my hands, my mind, my will. Tomorrow I'd sign a $100 million deal, a crown they'd never see coming. My mind drifted to that first year after NYU when I joined Horizon as an assistant, not executive, just a girl with a desk and a dream. I'd taken the job they'd mocked, but I'd used it, watching, learning, pitching ideas in quiet corners until the CEO, an aging man named Henrik, noticed. He'd mentored me, then stepped aside 5 years ago, leaving me to take the reins. I'd kept it quiet, letting the world and my family see the mask I wore, Leila, the assistant, the nobody, gave me freedom, a shadow to build in. Leila, darling. Aunt Margot's voice snapped me back, her arm looping through mine as she pulled me toward a cluster of cousins. Come say hello, don't be a wallflower. I let her drag me, her grip firm, her perfume cloying. Theo grinned as I approached, Clara at his side, her diamond bracelet flashing. Still holding down the fort at Horizon? He asked, his tone teasing. You're a trooper, Leila. Most people would have bailed by now. It's steady work, I said, my smile a mirror of theirs, empty, polite. Clara smirked, leaning in. Steady's sweet, but don't you ever want more? Theo could get you into Adler, something with a future. I've got a future, I said, my voice soft but firm, the first crack in my mask. They blinked, then laughed, brushing it off, and I let them. Tomorrow they'd choke on that laughter. I excused myself, slipping back to the bar, the night stretching on. Their words piled up, a decade of slights I'd turned into fuel. I'd worn this mask too long, but it had served me well. One more day and I'd shed it, reveal the queen they'd never seen on their chessboard. The ballroom's glow softened as the night wore on, the chandeliers dimming to a warm amber that bathed the Adler family in a flattering haze. I stood near a tall window, the glass cool against my shoulder, watching the party shift into its late hours, ties loosened, voices louder, the veneer of civility thinning. My wine was gone, the empty glass a prop I twirled in my fingers, my mind already half out the door, racing toward tomorrow. The $100 million deal loomed like a horizon I'd built brick by brick, and these people, my family, were oblivious, still tossing their barbs like pebbles at a wall they couldn't crack. Leila, you're awfully quiet tonight, Cousin Clara said, sidling up with a flute of champagne, her diamond bracelet glinting as she gestured. Not sulking, are we? These things can be overwhelming if you're not used to the pace. Her smile was syrupy, her eyes sharp, a predator sizing up prey she'd already dismissed. Just observing, I said, my tone light, my mask intact. It's a big night for everyone. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, bless you. Yes, Theo's London promotion's the talk of the room. You should have heard Victor earlier. Says it's the biggest move Adler's made this year. 50 million, Leila, real money. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You'd get it if you were in the game, not just assisting. I nodded, letting her words slide off me, their weight nothing against what I carried. 50 million. A respectable sum, sure, but tomorrow I'd double that in a single signature, and they'd never know until it hit them. Sounds impressive, I said, my smile polite, my eyes drifting past her to the room. Clara followed my gaze, misreading it. Don't feel bad, Leila. Not everyone's cut out for this world. You've got your little niche at Horizon, steady, safe. That's something. Something, I echoed, the irony curling inside me like smoke. Safe. That's what they thought, me tucked away in a corner, content with crumbs. They didn't know I'd turned that corner into a throne, that Horizon Dynamics wasn't a niche but an empire I'd forged over 10 years. I'd started as an assistant, yes, fetching coffee and taking notes, but I'd watched every meeting, every deal, every misstep. When Henrik retired, I'd stepped up, quiet as a shadow, until the board named me CEO 3 years ago. I'd kept it under wraps, letting the world see the Leila they expected. It had been my edge. A memory flickered. My first day at Horizon, 24 and nervous, my NYU diploma still crisp in its frame. I'd worn a second-hand blazer, my hands sweaty as I handed Henrik his latte, my voice small as I answered phones. But I'd listened, absorbed, pitched ideas in late-night emails he'd actually read. He'd seen something, grit, he'd called it, and pulled me into strategy sessions, then handed me the reins when he left. I'd built from there, turning a sleepy firm into a giant, all while they laughed at my little job. Leila! Uncle Victor's voice boomed, cutting through Clara's chatter. He strode over, a cigar stub between his fingers, Aunt Margot trailing behind like a queen consort. "You're not leaving yet, are you?" "Night's young." "Not yet," I said, straightening, my glass still in hand. "Just catching my breath." "Good," he said, clapping my back, his grin wide. "You should mingle, network a bit. Might find someone to pull you out of that assistant gig. Horizon's fine, but it's not Adler." "True," Aunt Margot chimed in, her eyes glinting. "You're wasting talent, Leila. I keep telling Victor, give her a desk at the firm, something entry-level. You'd thrive under real pressure." "I manage pressure just fine," I said, my voice smooth, a hint of steel slipping through. They blinked, exchanging a glance, then laughed. Victor's a deep rumble, Margot's a trill. "Spunk," Victor said, pointing his cigar at me. "That's the Adler in you. Too bad you're not using it." "Oh, I am," I said, softer now, my smile curling at the edges. They didn't catch it, too wrapped in their own narrative, and turned back to the crowd, dismissing me again. I watched them go, my pulse steady, my mind sharp. They played their game, pawns and kings on a board they thought they owned. But I'd built my own, bigger, quieter, and tomorrow I'd flip theirs over. The deal, $100 million with a tech conglomerate, wouldn't just be a win, it'd be a statement. They'd mocked me too long, and I'd let them. One more night of their ignorance, then I'd step into the light. I set the glass down, the clink a quiet promise, and headed for the door. Tomorrow I'd show them who'd been playing and winning all along. The drive home from Aunt Margot's estate was a blur of city lights and silence, the hum of my car's engine the only sound as I wound through Chicago's streets. Party lingered in my mind, their voices, their smirks, the weight of their assumptions pressing against me like a second skin. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles pale against the leather, the night stretching out dark and endless. Tomorrow loomed ahead, a precipice I'd built toward for 10 years, and the adrenaline was already sparking in my veins. My apartment was a stark contrast to the estate. Small, modern, uncluttered, a space I'd carved for myself alone. I kicked off my heels, the hardwood cool under my feet, and dropped my clutch on the counter. The black dress clung to me, a reminder of the mask I'd worn all night, and I peeled it off, trading it for sweats and a glass of water. The clock read 11:47 p.m., 9 hours until the boardroom, until the $100 million deal that'd rewrite everything they thought they knew about me. I sank onto the couch, my phone buzzing with a new text from Elise. "Teams set, contracts triple-checked. You're walking in as CEO tomorrow." "Still good." I smiled, typing back. "Never better. See you at 9. The screen dimmed, and I leaned my head back, staring at the ceiling, the quiet wrapping around me like a cocoon. CEO. I'd held the title for 3 years, but tomorrow would be its unveiling. No more shadows, no more pretending. They'd see Leila Adler, not the assistant, not the failure, but the woman who'd outplayed them all. My mind drifted to the early days at Horizon Dynamics, when I'd been invisible. A girl with a tray of coffees, a notepad, a head full of ideas no one asked for. I'd taken the job out of necessity after Uncle Victor's rejection, my startup dream crushed under his indifference. But I'd turned it into opportunity, staying late, studying the firm's weak spots, inefficient systems, missed markets. I'd pitched small fixes at first, memos slipped under Henrik's door, until he'd called me in one day, his gray eyes sharp. "You've got a mind for this, Leila," he'd said. "Prove it." I had, climbing from assistant to strategist to his right hand, then taking the helm when he retired. All while they laughed. A memory surfaced, 2 years ago, Thanksgiving at Margot's, when Theo had cornered me by the dessert table. "Still at Horizon, huh? What's that, 8 years of fetching lattes?" he teased, his wife snickering beside him. I'd smiled, nodded, let him think what he wanted. That same week, I'd closed a $20 million contract, my first as CEO, but I'd kept it quiet, my triumph locked behind their blindness. It had been easier that way, letting them underestimate me, giving me room to move unseen. I stood, pacing to the window, the skyline glittering beyond the glass. Aunt Margot's words echoed. "You're too clever for that, darling." She'd meant it as pity, but she was right. I was too clever for their game, so I'd built my own. Horizon wasn't just a job. It was a machine I'd tuned, a force I'd wielded, and tomorrow's deal, a merger with a Silicon Valley giant, would cement it. $100 million, a number that'd dwarf Adler's latest brag, signed by the woman they'd dismissed. The phone buzzed again, a voicemail this time from Freya. I played it, her voice tipsy and bright. "Leila, you left early." "Missed the toast to Theo, big night, you know?" "Call me, okay? We should talk about getting you out of that dead-end gig." I deleted it, my jaw tight. Dead end. They'd built a box for me, small, safe, subservient, and I'd let them, using their ignorance as my shield. Tomorrow I'd shatter it. I grabbed my laptop, pulling up the deal docs one last time. Pages of terms, figures, signatures waiting for mine. My name stared back. Leila Adler, Chief Executive Officer. I traced it with my finger, the weight of it sinking in. 10 years of silence, of swallowing their slights, of turning their rejection into power. I'd walked their gauntlet, taken their hits, and come out stronger, not with tears but with steel. Clock ticked past midnight, the city hushing outside. I closed the laptop, my pulse steady, my mind clear. They'd mocked me tonight, one last time, thinking I was still theirs to pity. But tomorrow I'd step into Horizon's boardroom, sign that deal, and let the world see what I'd built. The Adlers would feel it, their chessboard flipped, their queen revealed. I'd sleep tonight, not as their shadow, but as the storm they'd never seen coming. Morning broke over Chicago in a wash of pale gold, the sun slicing through my apartment's blinds and spilling across the hardwood. I stood at the window, coffee steaming in my hands, the city waking below me, cars humming, lights flickering off, a new day stretching out like a blank page. Today wasn't just another sunrise. It was the one I'd waited for, the one where I'd shed the mask I'd worn for a decade and step into the light. The $100 million deal waited, 9 o'clock sharp, and with it, the moment I'd rewrite the Adler family's story about me. I dressed with care, charcoal suit tailored to fit, heels that clicked with purpose, a silver pin at my lapel, subtle but sharp. No more black dresses to fade into their shadows. This was armor for the boardroom, a signal of what I'd become. My reflection stared back from the mirror, eyes steady, jaw set. Not the girl they'd mocked, but the woman who'd outgrown them. I grabbed my briefcase, the contracts heavy inside, and headed out, the door clicking shut behind me like a starting gun. Horizon Dynamics headquarters loomed downtown, a sleek tower of glass and steel I'd helped shape. The lobby buzzed with morning traffic, suits hurrying, phones chirping, but I moved through it calm, my pulse a quiet drumbeat. Elise met me at the elevator, her tablet glowing, her dark hair pulled tight. "Morning, boss," she said, her grin sharp. "Team's ready, Silicon Valley reps are upstairs. You look like you're about to conquer." "I am," I said, stepping in, the doors sliding shut. 10 years in the making. Let's do this. The boardroom was a cathedral of power. Long table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline. Team stood as I entered. 5 execs I'd handpicked, sharp and loyal, and across from them the Silicon Valley contingent, 3 men in crisp suits, their eyes appraising. I set my briefcase down, the click loud in the hush, and took my seat at the head. "Good morning," I said, my voice clear, carrying the weight of the moment. "Let's get to it." The next hour was a dance, terms hashed out, figures debated, every clause a step toward the finish line. I led it, calm but firm, my mind a steel trap honed by years of silent strategy. The lead rep, a wiry man named Jonas, leaned forward as we neared the end. "Impressive, Ms. Adler," he said, his pen tapping the contract. "Horizon's a force, your vision's clear." "We're in." "Thank you," I said, sliding the papers forward. "It's been a long road." I signed, Leila Adler, CEO, the ink dark and final, their signatures following. $100 million, sealed in a heartbeat, a triumph they'd never see coming back at Margot's estate. Handshakes, nods, then they were gone, leaving me with my team, the room buzzing with quiet victory. Elise grinned, shutting her tablet. You did it, Leila. The biggest deal in Horizon's history, and Adler's got nothing on this. Not yet, I said, standing, the skyline vast beyond the glass. But they will. I'd kept my title quiet even here, only the board and a few trusted souls knew until today. Now it'd ripple out and I'd let it. Back in my office, I sank into my chair, the contracts spread before me like a map of my war. My phone buzzed, a text from Theo. Heard Horizon's making noise today, some big merger. You catch that at the office? I stared at it, his casual jab a spark to my fuse. He didn't know, none of them did. I typed back, caught it, yeah. Busy day. Let him wonder. A memory hit, 5 years ago, a dinner at Victor's penthouse. I'd mentioned a promotion at Horizon, vague enough to dodge questions, and Margot had smirked. Assistant to assistant manager? Cute, Leila. I'd let it slide, my real title, VP then, locked away. They'd never asked, never cared, and I'd used that blindness to climb higher. I leaned back, the city sprawling below, my coffee cold now. The deal was done, but this wasn't the end, just the opening move. They'd mocked me last night, their laughter a whip I'd turned into wings. Tomorrow the press release would drop. Leila Adler, CEO, seals $100 million deal, and they'd choke on their words. I'd built this in their shadows, and now I'd step out, not with tears, but with power they couldn't ignore. Clock ticked toward noon, my next meeting waiting. I stood, briefcase in hand, ready for the day and the fallout. They'd see soon enough, I wasn't their pawn. I was the queen they'd never played. The afternoon sun slanted through my office window, painting the desk in streaks of gold as I reviewed the press release Elise had drafted. The words leaped off the screen, bold and unapologetic. Horizon Dynamics, under the leadership of CEO Leila Adler, today finalized a $100 million merger with Silicon Valley's Nextech, marking a transformative moment for the firm. I leaned back, the leather chair creaking under me, a quiet satisfaction settling in my chest. This wasn't just a deal, it was a declaration, a crack in the wall they'd built around me. I nodded to Elise, who hovered by the door, her tablet glowing. Send it, I said. Let it hit. She grinned, tapping the screen, and I felt the shift, like a stone dropped into still water, the ripples already spreading. The release would go live within the hour. Business wires, news outlets, social feeds, and the Adlers would see it one by one. I pictured Aunt Margot's manicured hand pausing over her phone, Uncle Victor's cigar stalling mid-puff, Theo's smirk fading. They'd mocked me last night, their pity a blade I'd sharpened for this moment. Now they'd feel the edge. My phone buzzed, a call from Freya popping up. I let it ring twice, then answered, my voice cool. Hey, Freya. Leila, she chirped, her tone bright but brittle like glass about to shatter. Just saw something wild, Horizons in the news, some huge deal. Did you know about this at work? I smiled, slow and deliberate, the mask slipping just a fraction. Yeah, I knew. I signed it this morning. A pause, then a laugh, high, uncertain. Signed it? What, like you were in the room? That's crazy, your bosses must be thrilled. They are, I said, leaning forward, my fingers tracing the edge of the contract still on my desk. But I didn't just sign as a witness, Freya. I signed as CEO. Silence, thick and heavy, stretched across the line. I could almost hear her brain scrambling, recalculating. CEO, she finally squeaked, her voice climbing. You? A Horizon? Since when? 3 years, I said, calm as stone. Took the helm when Henrik stepped down. kept it quiet, didn't see the need to broadcast it. 3 years, she echoed, disbelief threading her words. But you're an assistant, Leila. You said. No, I cut in, my tone firm but not cruel. You assume. I let you. I've been running Horizon, building it. Today's just the latest win, $100 million, bigger than Theo's London deal. Another beat of silence, then a rush of breath. I don't get it. Why didn't you tell us? We thought. You thought what you wanted, I said, standing, pacing to the window. That I was stuck, small, safe. I let you think it because it gave me room to work. I didn't need your approval or Adler's. Leila, this is insane, she said, her laugh shaky now. Mom's going to flip. Theo too. You're serious? Dead serious, I said, gazing out at the skyline, my reflection faint in the glass. Check the press release, it's live now. You'll see my name. She stammered something, half congratulations, half shock, then hung up, probably racing to tell the others. I set the phone down, my pulse steady, a quiet thrill humming through me. The ripple was moving, and I'd lit the fuse. A memory flickered. 6 years ago, a summer barbecue at Victor's lake house. I'd been on a call with Henrik, finalizing a $10 million contract when Margot had waved me over, her voice dripping. Leila, put that phone down, secretaries don't get holidays? I'd smiled, nodded, slipped it away, the deal already mine. They'd never asked what I was doing, never cared beyond their script. I'd use that, every slight, every laugh, turning their blindness into my strength. The phone buzzed again, Theo this time, a text. CEO? For real? Call me. I ignored it, letting him stew. He'd see soon enough, they all would. The news would spread, boardrooms, dinner tables, their precious Adler network, and they'd scramble to rewrite me in their heads. I'd been their punchline, their cautionary tale, but now I was their reckoning. Elise poked her head in, her eyes bright. It's out, phones are ringing already. You're trending, Leila. Good, I said, turning back to the desk, the contract's a trophy under my hand. Let them talk. I sat, pulling up the next agenda. Meetings, expansions, the empire I'd built. Last night they'd laughed, today I'd won. Tomorrow they'd face me, not the Leila they'd mocked, but the one who'd outplayed them, silent and sure. The game was mine now, and I'd only just started. The Horizon office thrummed with a quiet energy, phones buzzing, voices overlapping as the news of the $100 million deal rippled outward. I sat at my desk, the skyline sprawling beyond the window, a cup of coffee cooling beside me as I skimmed emails. Congratulations from partners, queries from press, a flood I'd unleashed with one signature. Press release had hit like a thunderclap, and I could feel the Adlers reeling, their world tilting as my name, Leila Adler, CEO, echoed back to them. I'd waited 10 years for this, and the taste was sharper than I'd imagined. My phone lit up, a call from Uncle Victor cutting through the hum. I let it ring once, twice, then answered, leaning back in my chair, my voice calm. Hello, Uncle Victor. Leila, he barked, his tone a mix of shock and something harder, anger maybe or disbelief. What the hell's this I'm hearing? CEO of Horizon? $100 million deal? You. That's right, I said, my fingers tracing the edge of my desk, the wood smooth under my touch. Signed it this morning. Been running the show for 3 years now. 3 years! His voice climbed, rough with the cigar smoke I could practically smell through the line. You've been sitting on this, playing assistant, while we're over here thinking, Christ, Leila, why didn't you say something? I smiled, small and cold. You never asked. None of you did. You saw what you wanted, a girl stuck in a dead-end job, too stubborn to join Adler. I let you think it. Worked better that way. Better, he sputtered, a cough breaking his words. You've outdone Theo's London deal, outdone me, damn it, and you're telling me it was a game? We could have used you, Leila. Adler's your blood. Adler didn't want me, I said, my tone flat, cutting through his bluster. 10 years ago, I pitched you a plan, consulting, restructuring. You laughed me out of the room, said I should start small. I did. Just not with you. Silence, heavy and thick, hung between us. I could picture him, red-faced, cigar clenched, the king of his castle suddenly off balance. That was a kid's idea, he finally said, quieter now. You've proved your point. Come back, let's talk real stakes. No, I said, standing, pacing to the window. I've got my stakes, Horizon's mine. I built it, not you. You don't get to claim me now. Leila, he started, but I cut him off. Check the news, I said. It's all there. I hung up, my pulse steady, the city glittering below like a prize I'd already won. He'd scramble, maybe rage, but it didn't matter. The board was flipped. A text pinged, Margot this time, CEO? Leila, darling, why hide this? Call me, we must celebrate. Celebrate. Her pity turned to pride now that the numbers were big enough. I ignored it, letting her stew in the shift. Another buzz, Clara. Theo's floored, CEO? You sneaky thing. Drink soon. I deleted it, their sudden interest a hollow echo of last night's smirks. A memory surfaced, 4 years ago, a gala at Adler's downtown office. I'd worn a plain dress, stood by the bar, listening as Victor bragged about a $30 million contract. Margot had pulled me aside, her voice syrupy. Leila, you should network. Horizon won't open doors like this. I'd nodded, smiled. My own $15 million deal closed that week, locked behind my silence. They'd never looked past the surface, and I'd let them dig their hole. Elise knocked, stepping in with a stack of papers. Press wants interviews, Forbes, CNBC. You're a story now, Leila. Let them wait, I said, turning back to the desk. We've got work, next quarter's projections, expansion plans. This deal's just the start. She nodded, setting the stack down. Adler's calling yet? Like flies, I said, a laugh slipping out. They're waking up. Good, she said, her grin sharp. Let them buzz. I sat, pulling the projections forward, my mind already racing ahead. The deal was done, the mask off, but this wasn't the end, just the reveal. They'd mocked me, pitted me, boxed me in, and I'd used it, every word, every slight, to climb higher than their empire. Now they'd hear my name, not as their failure, but as their rival. I'd built this in the dark, and today I'd stepped into the light, not for their applause, but for the power I'd earned. The Horizon office buzzed into the late afternoon, a hive of activity as the $100 million deal shockwaves rolled through the industry. My desk was a battlefield of papers, projections, emails, a Forbes request I'd pushed aside for now. The skyline glowed orange beyond the window, the city sinking into dusk, but I felt wide awake, electric, every nerve tuned to the fallout I'd set in motion. The Adlers were scrambling. I could feel it, their calls and texts piling up like debris after a storm. I'd flipped their board, and they were still grasping at the pieces. My phone buzzed again, Theo, a voicemail this time. I played it, his voice tight, a mix of awe and irritation. Leila, CEO? Seriously? You've been running Horizon under our noses? Call me, we need to talk. This is nuts. I smirked, deleting it. Nuts. That's what they'd call it, my decade of silence, my climb from their shadow to their rival. He'd laughed last night, offered me a pity job, and now he'd choke on it. A knock pulled me from my thoughts. Elise, her arms full of files, her eyes bright. You've got a visitor, she said, stepping aside. Freya slipped in, her sapphire coat draped over one arm, her face a canvas of shock and something softer, regret maybe. I stood, crossing my arms, the room shrinking with her presence. Leila, she said, her voice small, her usual chirp muted. I saw the news. CEO. $100 million. I had no idea. No one did, I said, leaning against the desk, my tone even. I didn't want you to. She fidgeted, her fingers twisting the coat's hem. Why? We're family, why hide it? I thought you were stuck. We all did. That's why, I said, stepping closer, my gaze locking hers. You assumed I was less, secretary assistant, some nobody in a rut. I let you think it because it kept you out of my way. I didn't need your pity or your help. Her eyes widened, then dropped, guilt flickering across her face. I mean, we didn't know. Theo's freaking out, Mom's furious you didn't tell her. Victor keeps saying you should have joined Adler. Adler didn't want me, I said, my voice cutting through hers. I tried, Freya. 10 years ago, I pitched Victor a plan. He brushed me off, said I wasn't ready. Margot told me to start small. So I did, on my terms. This, I gestured to the office, the skyline, is what I built without them. She swallowed, nodding slowly. I'm sorry, Leila. For the things I said last night before. I didn't know you were this. This. I laughed, sharp and low. I've always been this. You just didn't look. She flinched, then straightened, a faint smile breaking through. You're right. We didn't. But congrats, okay? This is huge. She hesitated, then stepped forward, hugging me quick and awkward before pulling back. I'll tell them to back off. They're reeling. Let them reel, I said, softening just a fraction. I'm done explaining. She nodded, slipping out, the door clicking shut behind her. I sank into my chair, the silence settling, Freya's words echoing, we didn't know. Course they didn't. I'd made sure of it, turning their dismissal into my shield, their laughter into my ladder. A memory hit. 7 years ago, a family dinner, Clara smirking as she'd asked. Still at Horizon? Don't you ever get bored? I'd smiled, said no, my first $1 million deal closed that week, locked in my silence. They'd never seen past their script. The phone buzzed, Margot again, a text. Darling, we must talk. CEO? Incredible. Dinner tomorrow. I ignored it, my jaw tight. Incredible now, when last night I'd been a punchline. Victor called next, then Theo again. I let them stack, unanswered, their urgency a music I'd earned. Elise poked her head in, grinning. Socials exploding. Leila Adler, Horizon's secret weapon. Adler Enterprises is trending too. People asking why they missed you. They didn't miss me, I said, standing, the contract still warm under my hand. They pushed me away. Their loss. Damn right, she said, ducking out. I paced to the window, the city now a tapestry of lights, my reflection sharp in the glass. The fallout was here, shock, apologies, offers, and I'd let it crash around me. I'd built Horizon in their blind spot, and now they'd see, not just the deal, but the woman who'd outplayed them. One more day and I'd face them, not as their shadow, but as their equal. No, they're better. The morning after the deal broke, Chicago glittered under a crisp blue sky, the air sharp with promise as I drove toward Aunt Margot's estate. She'd texted late last night. Family brunch, 11 a.m. We need to see you, darling. Her tone a mix of pride and panic I hadn't answered. I'd agreed not for them, but for me, to stand in their midst, not as the Leila they'd mocked, but as the one who'd turned their game upside down. My charcoal suit was crisp, my heels clicking with every step, the $100 million contract a quiet weight in my briefcase. This wasn't a celebration, it was a reckoning. The estate loomed as I pulled up, its ivy-clad walls and towering windows unchanged, but the air felt different, charged, unsteady. I stepped inside, the foyer's marble cool underfoot, voices spilling from the dining room. They were all there, Margot, Victor, Theo, Freya, Clara, a tableau of Adlers, their chatter faltering as I entered. The table gleamed with crystal and silver, a spread of pastries and coffee, but their eyes were on me, wide and searching, like I was a stranger in their script. Leila! Margot rose, her emerald earrings swaying, her smile tight but warm. There you are, our star. CEO of Horizon, $100 million. Darling, why didn't you tell us? She hugged me, her perfume sharp, her grip a little too eager. I pulled back, meeting her gaze. You didn't ask, Aunt Margot. None of you did. Victor stood, his cigar absent but his presence heavy, his voice gruff. Damn right we didn't. Thought you were, hell, Leila, assistant? You've been running a company bigger than half our divisions. 3 years, I said, setting my briefcase down, the click loud in the hush. Took over when Henrik left. Built it up. $100 million's just today's win. Theo leaned forward, his tie crooked, his grin strained. CEO? You let me ramble last night about London, $50 million, like I was the big shot. You could have said something. Could have, I said, my tone cool, my eyes steady on his. But you didn't need to know, not then. You offered me a job, Theo. Assistant to strategy. Remember? He flushed, Clara shifting beside him, her bracelet clinking. I thought you were stuck, Leila. We all did. That's the point, I said, stepping closer, my voice rising just enough. You assumed secretary nobody, a girl wasting her potential. I let you because it gave me space. 10 years ago I came to you, I turned to Victor with a plan for Adler. You said no, told me to start small. So I did, outside your walls. Margot's hand fluttered to her necklace, her face paling. Leila, we didn't know you had this in you. If we'd... You'd what? Cut in sharp now. Given me a desk? A title? I didn't need your charity, I took my shot and won. Horizon's mine, not Adler's shadow. Freya spoke, her voice soft. We messed up, Leila. I'm sorry for the jabs, the assumptions. You're incredible. Thanks, I said, softening a fraction, but my stance didn't waver. But I didn't do this for apologies. I did it for me. Victor cleared his throat, his eyes narrowing. You've made your point, damn good one. Come back, Leila. Adler needs you, real stakes, family stakes. No, I said, final as stone. I've got my stakes. You don't get to claim me now because the numbers are big. You had your chance. Silence fell, thick and heavy, their faces a gallery of shock, guilt, grudging respect. Clara broke it, her voice small. So what now? You're better than us. Not better, I said, picking up my briefcase. Different. I built this, my way, my rules. You'll hear my name not as your failure, but as your rival. Deal with it. I turned, their eyes burning into my back, and walked out, heels clicking, head high. The foyer echoed my steps, the estate shrinking behind me as I reached my car. A memory flashed. 10 years ago, leaving Victor's office, my proposal crumpled, their laughter chasing me. Today I'd flipped it, not with tears, but with power. I drove off, the city opening before me, my phone buzzing, press, partners, the world catching up. The Adlers would talk, adjust, maybe even respect me now. But I didn't need it. I'd built Horizon, claimed my place, not their pawn, not their queen, but mine. The board was flipped and I'd won.